The purpose of this recording is to provide exemplification of the lower end of CEFR Level B1 performance for speaking. We'll talk about indicators of performance that make these test takers typical of the bottom of the B1 band. This recording only provides test taker responses. If you would like further context for the questions in this recording, you can find the corresponding test item audio and transcripts in the video. Speaking exemplification, item audio and transcripts. Table 1 shows the alignment of PTE Academic scores to the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, or CEFR. The exemplification materials in this resource have been selected using this alignment. These exemplification materials show responses from test takers who have been classified at each CEFR band based on their PTE Academic speaking score. It should be noted that speaking scores come from the combination of many test items that measure different aspects of language proficiency. The purpose of these exemplars is to show the range of item responses produced by test takers in different CEFR bands and to provide indicative evidence of the key features of speaking performances across and within CEFR language proficiency bands. At low B1 level, test takers can usually use a range of simple language with sufficient confidence and clarity to produce descriptions of familiar activities and events, participate in short conversations, and respond to questions. They will be able to use some simple sentence structures in an error-free manner, but are likely to still make basic errors, especially when attempting to use higher-level vocabulary and more complex sentence structures. For each test item, you will hear the test taker's response first, followed by the commentary on their response.
The bar diagram shows important information regarding population in South Africa from 1996 to 2016. It provides population in million. In 1996, the population was 40 million and 20 million was female, 20 million was male. In 2016, we can see that the population is close to 60 million, where the male population is dominated by the female population. In conclusion, the bar diagram provides important information about the population segregation in South Africa.
This test taker's response is typical of the low B1 level. As expected of low B1 test takers, he shows the ability to interpret and describe some of the chart's overall trends. The vocabulary used is usually appropriate, but is mostly lifted directly from the chart's labels, with very few attempts at paraphrase or expansion, highlighting the lexical limitations we would expect at the low B1 level. Low B1 level test takers would be expected to have a good range of vocabulary for familiar topics, but an insufficient range of technical terms for fully describing the trends depicted on a chart like this. At low B1, we expect major errors to occur when test takers are expressing more complex thoughts, and this test taker provides an example of such errors. For example, when he says the male population is dominated by the female population. The chart actually shows that the male and female populations are approximately equal in size. By dominated, he may mean that the female population is shown above the male population on the chart, in the upper part of the bars.
The speaker is speaking on urban city planning. In example, the lecturer mentioned that Melbourne is a good example of urban planning. Many cities in the world could not grow very long due to limited space. In case of Melbourne, it's a modern city. You can travel to greater distance with public transport. And traditionally, if you want to go to the suburbs, you need to use your own car. So you can travel long distance with your own private transport system. In conclusion, the lecture provides important information regarding urban city planning.
This task type highlights low B1 characteristics in relation to both the test taker's receptive skills and their productive skills. Typical of low B1 test takers, The test taker demonstrates the ability to understand the main points of what is said, but fails to distinguish between main points and supporting details, many of which he seems not to have caught. This is in line with expectations of the low B1 level, where we do not expect test takers to fully understand presentations of this kind unless they are about very familiar topics. His description of the lecture is relatively fluent at first, but becomes more hesitant and less coherent once he moves beyond explaining the main topic. As expected at low B1, much of what he says is intelligible, but he regularly mispronounces individual sounds, particularly vowels. The prosodic features of his speech, stress, intonation, and rhythm, are heavily influenced by the other languages. He speaks in a way that is common at B1 level.
The speakers were talking about University Open Day. So this year they have so many strong applications. The applications have a strong background from overseas and domestic students. Due to the high reputation of the university, most of the students they got encouraged to apply in that university. So to encourage the students, they need to show that this university is really doing well, and the students from different backgrounds they are coming, and the university needs to show them that students from different backgrounds they can do well in that university. So this university is a place for all the students, different backgrounds, both domestic and foreign students. They can succeed here. They can also be successful. Even one speaker was telling that students from modest background they are really doing well in some classes. So first year students to give an idea about the teaching style, what they can do, they can hire the first year students as volunteers to provide an idea of the students what is waiting for them, to encourage more students and to overcome the challenges most of the students face in their first year. They should be guided what's waiting for them. In conclusion, the open day, the students need to be properly briefed what challenges, what academics, and what type of information is important for them to do good in the student life and to manage their study well.
At B1 level, we expect that test takers can generally follow the main points of extended discussions around them, provided they are about a familiar topic and are clearly articulated in standard language. This test taker demonstrates some ability to do this by conveying some main points of the discussion within his summary. In terms of fluency, he is quite typical of low B1 because he can keep going at quite a steady pace, but pausing for grammatical and lexical planning and repair is evident throughout his summary. Although his pronunciation is mostly clear, it is heavily influenced by his first language and certain sentences, such as they can help the first-year students are almost unintelligible.
As he is moving to a new place, in the new apartment, he will need some things to cook. So I think it's a good idea to purchase a microwave for him because he wants to, when he's going to university, he needs to 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 hot his food. Then he can use this microwave. I think it's a good suggestion, which he can use in his everyday life, which is very essential. And the new apartment, he needs this thing.
This test taker's ability in relation to oral interaction tasks like this is typical of the low B1 level. He can use a range of simple language to express personal opinions on familiar topics, like buying a present for a friend. As expected at low B1, he is able to enter into this conversational situation unprepared with some success, as is required by the task having only 10 seconds of preparation time. The test taker makes numerous grammatical and lexical errors. For example, when he says he needs to hot his food, but as expected at low B1, what he is trying to say is mostly clear. He has enough language to get by in situations like this, though he struggles to express his ideas with precision.
From the graph there, we can see the population of South Africa from the 1996 up until 2016. So the population was continuously increased throughout the years. It breaks down to the female and the males, where we can see the both of them are increasing throughout the years. However, the female has more increase than the males in between the population numbers.
This test taker's response shows characteristics of low B1 level. He manages to describe most main features of the image, generally using appropriate vocabulary. His description is logically structured with the topic introduced first and the main trends summarized. Although his fluency is relatively good and he can use some basic sentence structures in an error-free manner, the overall quality of his response is impacted by coherence issues, often relating to his pronunciation. His use of intonation and stress, both word stress and sentence-level stress, is influenced by his first language, and this puts some strain on the listener, especially when he uses rising intonation on the word years at the end of two sentences.
Melbourne is probably one of the modern and urban cities that in Australia using modern transport, whereas it's probably impossible to travel between the cities because it's too hard without by bike.
The test taker's retelling of the lecture highlights limitations to his receptive abilities that are typical of the low B1 level. Although he conveys an understanding of the lecture's topic, he has clearly not understood its main points about transport in Melbourne. As expected at low B1 level, the test taker has limited fluency when describing a topic of this nature, with pausing for grammatical and lexical planning very evident. His speech can generally be understood, but limitations to his phonological control are apparent, particularly with the word modern and his final utterance, which is unintelligible.
From the conversation, they were talking about the school open day, and they were talking about that the higher numbers of application at the moment, which it was led by the potential of the school and the numbers of the rejecting applicants, especially for those good applicants as well. The whole open day, the purpose of it is to show the perspective and good fit for those students of what they're being offered. Um, and also the young people will be able to recognize their ability to study. Doesn't matter what background they're coming from, because the student, the school will be able to show the variety of the study for those who are coming from modern society and who are coming from the um, country wide. And we've got a lot of our first year volunteers to be in the open days to show them where to go.
The test taker demonstrates that he has followed most of the discussion's main points. Errors with vocabulary choice and grammar occur regularly. For example, when he says to show the perspective and the good fit for those students, and what they been offer. However, for the most part, it is clear what the test taker is trying to say. His lexical limitations lead to some repetition, and he has difficulty with formulation at times, but he has sufficient vocabulary to summarize the discussion, albeit with a lot of pausing for grammatical and lexical planning, as we would expect at low B1 level.
But because she has been in the university for a long time, so I will probably just suggest them to go with something that is memorable, something that is identical for their entire university life. So things like a book, a signing, which being signed by all the friends and good wishes, honor, um, and with some photos on it if possible, and so that she can recap the past of the university life.
This test taker demonstrates interactional skills typical of low B1 level. He shows he can enter unprepared into a conversation on a familiar topic, expressing a personal opinion and exchanging information politely. His vocabulary range is just about sufficient to convey his ideas, but word choice errors cause some confusion. For example, when he suggests buying something that is identical for their entire university life. By identical, he seems to mean something like evocative or helping them remember. The test taker can keep going comprehensibly, even though he regularly pauses for grammatical and lexical planning and repair. His phonological control shows limitations typical of low B1 level. His pronunciation and the prosodic features of his speech, stress, intonation, and rhythm, are clearly influenced by his first language, with certain words such as memorable being virtually unintelligible. However, for the most part, we can understand what he is trying to say.